What is the secret of capital that continues to captivate the world? A groundbreaking work of thought that swept the globe, it still profoundly influences how we think about wealth and society after more than 150 years. Why has Das Kapital become a towering masterpiece of economics? With his razor-sharp pen, Karl Marx unveiled the inner workings and contradictions of capitalism, inviting us to dive into this classic to explore how capital shapes the world and plants the seeds of its own crises. Marx's quest and the spark of his ideas. Karl Marx was born in 1818 in Trier, Germany, into a middle-class family, with a lawyer father and a comfortable yet unsettled home. His youth unfolded amid Europe's Industrial Revolution, where the roar of factories mingled with workers' cries, and social inequalities grew ever more glaring. At the universities of Bonn and Berlin, Marx studied law and philosophy, deeply influenced by Hegel's dialectics, gradually shifting his focus to social realities. In 1843, he and his wife Jenny moved to Paris, where he met Friedrich Engels, the son of a factory owner, who became his lifelong intellectual partner. Marx's writing journey was far from smooth. The first volume of Das Kapital was published in 1867, after nearly 2 decades of painstaking effort. He often toiled in the British Museum in London, poring over economic data and historical records, while his family frequently faced poverty. Jenny once wrote, "Karl poured his heart into his ideals, yet we could barely afford bread." These challenging years shaped the depth of Das Kapital, as Marx, through keen observation and rigorous analysis, sought to unravel the mysteries of capital. Central question cut to the core: how is wealth created? Why do workers toil yet remain impoverished? These questions drove him to build a groundbreaking economic framework. Marx's life was not just the starting point of his ideas, but the very soul of Das Kapital. On London streets, he witnessed the tragic lives of child laborers, documenting figures like Emma Brown, a 12-year-old textile worker laboring 14 hours a day for wages barely enough for bread. This fueled his resolve to dissect capitalism's mechanisms and reveal the true relationship between labor and wealth. His insights stemmed not only from books but from a profound engagement with reality. Inspired by Paris's workers' movements, Marx joined discussions during the 1848 revolutions, witnessing the passion and failures of worker uprisings. These experiences convinced him that theory must unite with practice to change the world. In London's impoverished conditions, Marx and Engels forged a profound partnership. Engels not only supported Marx financially but provided first-hand insights into factory operations. For example, at his Manchester cotton mill, Engels saw workers toiling beside dangerous machines, with child laborers sometimes killed in accidents caused by exhaustion. These accounts gave Das Kapital its raw, real-world foundation. Marx wrote in a letter, "Without Engels' support, I could not have completed this work." This fusion of theory and practice gave Das Kapital both intellectual rigor and a grounding in reality. Marx's Paris years also shaped his worldview. His exchanges with worker leader Louis-Auguste Blanqui revealed the awakening and struggles of the working class. He documented a French worker, Pierre Dupont, who organized barricades in the 1848 uprising. Though it failed, it ignited Marx's belief in class struggle. These experiences positioned Das Kapital as more than an academic study. It was a manifesto for transforming the world. He wrote, "Philosophers have only interpreted the world. The point is to change it." This sense of purpose runs through the book, inspiring generations. 2. Labor theory of value, the true source of wealth. One of Das Kapital's core ideas is the labor theory of value, where Marx argued that a commodity's value is determined by the socially necessary labor time required to produce it. He wrote, "Use value is merely the material carrier of value. The substance of value is labor." This theory upended traditional economic views, placing labor at the heart of wealth creation. Take 19th century Manchester's textile mills, where worker James Harper operated machines daily, weaving hundreds of yards of cloth. The cloth sold for high prices, yet James earned a pittance. Marx argued that the cloth's value came not from machines or materials but from James's labor time. Socially necessary labor time is the average labor needed to produce a commodity under current technological conditions. For instance, if weaving 1 yard of cloth takes an average of 0.1 hours, its value is set by that 0.1 hours, not the cloth's appearance. Marx's labor theory of value also revealed how commodity values change dynamically. Socially necessary labor time shifts with technological progress. In the early 19th century, hand-weaving a yard of cloth took 0.2 hours, but steam looms cut this to 0.05 hours, reducing the commodity's value. This meant technology boosted efficiency but lowered prices, forcing capitalists to cut wages to maintain profits. Marx wrote, "Each technological leap comes with worsening labor conditions." Ian MacDonald, a Glasgow textile worker, once a skilled hand weaver who became a low-paid machine operator after steam looms halved his income. This interplay of technology and value deeply affected workers' lives. Marx noted that the labor theory of value applies to both simple and complex products. In the late 18th century, London watchmaker Henry Ward spent dozens of hours crafting a pocket watch, its value tied to his skilled labor. But industrialization slashed production time to a few hours, causing watch prices to plummet and rendering Henry's skills obsolete. This raises the question, does technological progress always benefit workers? Marx's theory reminds us that labor, not machines, is the true source of value. The labor theory of value also exposed the commodity fetishism phenomenon. Marx argued that commodities, presented as market prices, conceal the labor behind them. He wrote, "The commodity form mystifies the true relations of labor." For example, a pair of shoes in a London market might cost £10, but consumers don't see the 12 hours of toil by shoemaker Thomas Wilson. This mystification leads people to think value comes from the market, not labor. Marx further noted that commodity exchange reflects social relations. Market prices seem objective but reveal workers' efforts and capitalists' gains. This theory isn't abstract philosophy but a piercing insight into reality. Marx showed that capitalists extract value by lowering wages or extending hours. He cited British factory reports: child laborers work until midnight, their health ruined, yet no one cares. This explained wealth inequality and laid the foundation for his surplus value theory. The labor theory of value remains timeless. Today, programmer Alice Carter creates software worth millions for a tech company, yet her salary is a fraction of the profits. Marx's theory reminds us that labor is the source of wealth and unequal distribution persists. In 2020, Silicon Valley worker Isabella Gomez built a hit app generating millions in revenue, yet earned only $100,000 a year. This echoes 19th century factories, with physical labor now replaced by mental labor. Marx also explored how labor division affects value. In the Industrial Revolution, machines broke production into repetitive tasks. James Harper performed a single operation, boosting efficiency but eroding skills. Marx wrote, "Division of labor turns workers into one-sided, deformed beings." This prompts reflection: are modern assembly line workers or outsourced call center staff, like Ravi Singh in Bangalore handling hundreds of calls daily, reliving this alienation? 3. Surplus value, the mechanism of capital's extraction. In Das Kapital, Marx introduced the surplus value theory, revealing the source of capitalist profits. He argued that workers' wages cover only necessary labor time, the time needed to sustain their lives, while the value from surplus labor time is taken by capitalists for free. This surplus value is the profit. Take Thomas Wilson, a 19th century London shoemaker, working 12 hours daily. His first 6 hours covered his wages, but the next 6 hours' output went to the factory owner. Marx wrote, "Surplus value is the direct engine of capital accumulation." Capitalists extract more surplus value by extending hours or boosting efficiency. For instance, steam engines doubled textile factory output, yet workers saw no gains. Steam power also reshaped labor organization. Marx analyzed the rise of the factory system, where capitalists maximized surplus value through centralized production and strict management. In Manchester, cotton mill owner Samuel Gregory packed workers into large factories, using piece-rate wages to push workers like Rebecca Hall to operate machines faster. Her output doubled, but her wages stayed nearly the same, with surplus value going to the owner. Marx wrote, "The factory system is capital's total domination over labor." He cited 1,850 seconds factory reports showing British textile workers' average lifespan was just 35, far below rural farmers. This extraction extended to family labor, with capitalists hiring entire families to cut costs. In Birmingham's nail workshops, worker Joseph Parker's wife and 3 children toiled 12 hours daily, making thousands of nails for barely enough to buy bread. This family labor model let capitalists maximize surplus value at minimal cost. Marx's insight shows surplus value extraction is not just economic but reshapes social relations. Today's gig economy, like delivery rider Caroline Baker in London cycling dozens of kilometers daily, sees platforms suppress pay under the guise of flexible work. Is this not the same logic? The surplus value theory explains profit origins and exposes capitalism's exploitative core. Through detailed data, Marx showed workers labored 14 hours daily for wages covering only rent and bread, while capitalists bought mansions with surplus value. He quoted factory owners, "Our profits come from workers' sweat." He documented child laborers like 13-year-old Mary Evans, who fainted from overwork in a factory but resumed work upon waking. This theory remains relevant today. 2020, warehouse worker Alan Smith packed hundreds of parcels hourly for an e-commerce giant, earning minimum wage while the company reaped billions in profits. Marx's insight shows surplus value extraction persists, shifting from factories to the digital economy. For example, London ride-hailing driver Hassan Ali drives 12 hours daily, with platforms taking up to 30% commission, leaving him barely enough to live. This mirrors the factory exploitation Marx described. Marx distinguished 2 forms of surplus value: absolute extending hours and relative increasing productivity. In Birmingham steel mills, owner Henry Clark increased absolute surplus value through overtime and relative surplus value with new furnaces. Marx noted that while technology boosts productivity, profits go to capitalists, with workers getting minimal wages. This prompts the question, is artificial intelligence extracting surplus value in new ways? 4. Capital accumulation, the root of expansion and crises. Capital accumulation is another key theme in Das Kapital. Marx argued that capitalists reinvest surplus value into production, driving endless capital expansion. He wrote, "The movement of capital knows no bounds." This process fueled capitalism's growth but sowed the seeds of crises. In the Industrial Revolution, Manchester cotton mill owners used surplus value to buy more machines, hire more workers, and scale up production. But Marx noted that capital accumulation raises the organic composition of capital, increasing machinery constant capital while reducing workers' variable capital. This means fewer workers create surplus value, lowering profit rates. The 19th century railway boom illustrated this vividly. Capitalists like George Hudson invested in railways, reaping huge early profits, but overinvestment led to redundant lines and market saturation, triggering the 1840s railway bubble collapse. Marx wrote, "Capital accumulation inevitably leads to periodic crises." Using British economic data, he traced the roots of crises from 1830 to 1850, like the 1837 crisis that left thousands jobless. The 1837 crisis stemmed from blind capital expansion. Marx analyzed how Britain's cotton industry overinvested due to booming foreign markets, with Manchester factories springing up rapidly. But when U.S. demand shrank, unsold goods led to factory closures, leaving workers like William Thompson's family homeless. Marx noted, "Capital's greed creates the anarchy of production." He cited parliamentary reports showing unemployment soaring to 20% in 1837, especially among textile workers. Capital accumulation also created a relative surplus population. Marx argued that as machines replaced labor, capitalists needed fewer workers, forming an industrial reserve army. In Liverpool, dock worker Edward Reed lost his job to cranes, surviving on sporadic unloading work. This surplus population depressed wages, making surplus value extraction easier. Marx's analysis remains relevant today. In the 2020s, automated warehouses displaced workers like Maria Santos in Chicago, forcing her into low-paid temporary jobs. This prompts reflection: is technology serving capital rather than all of humanity? Modern capital accumulation contradictions persist. The 2008 financial crisis saw U.S. real estate overinvestment trigger the subprime crisis, costing millions their homes while bank executives pocketed huge bonuses. Marx's theory warns that capital's reckless expansion often ends in social costs. In the 2020s, an electric vehicle company's massive factory investments pushed its market value to $1 trillion, yet workers like Carlos Sanchez in Detroit lost jobs to automation. Marx also analyzed capital concentration and centralization, where large capital engulfs smaller players, forming monopolies. In the late 19th century, John D. Rockefeller's Standard Oil crushed small refineries through predatory pricing, controlling 90% of the U.S. oil market. Marx noted that this concentration deepened social inequality, with a few capitalists controlling production. Today, tech giants like a certain social media company dominate global information flows through algorithms and data monopolies, echoing Marx's insights. Capitalism's contradictions, the seeds of self-destruction. As Capital's deepest insight lies in exposing capitalism's inherent contradictions. Marx argued that capitalism's pursuit of maximum profit leads to overproduction and growing inequality, ultimately undermining its own foundations. He wrote, "The death knell of capitalism has already sounded." In 19th century Europe, factories mass-produced goods, but workers' low wages limited purchasing power, causing unsold stock. Marx called this the contradiction between socialized production and private appropriation. He cited British data. In the 1840s, London warehouses overflowed with textiles, yet workers went unclothed. This contradiction triggered periodic crises, like the 1857 Global Depression, with factory closures and workers left destitute. Marx also analyzed escalating class contradictions. Capital accumulation concentrated wealth among a few, impoverishing the working class. He documented the Paris Commune of 1871, where workers tried to overthrow capitalist rule. Though it failed, it showcased class struggle's power. He wrote, "Class struggle is the driving force of history." Paris Commune leader Louise Michel organized medical teams, reflecting workers' awakening. The Commune was not just rebellion but an experiment in a new social order. Marx detailed how it abolished child labor, introduced an 8-hour workday, and tried to collectivize production. Commune member and baker Pierre Leroux ran a cooperative bakery, sharing profits among workers, not owners. Though crushed, this experiment inspired later cooperative movements. Marx wrote, "The Commune was the first attempt at workers' self-emancipation." He believed such struggles exposed capitalism's fragility. When workers awaken, capital's rule falters. Marx also analyzed capitalism's cultural impact. Capital's profit-driven logic commodified everything, including art and education. In 19th century London, publishers churned out cheap novels for profit, sidelining works like Charles Dickens's that depicted workers' struggles. Marx noted that this cultural commodification silenced workers' voices. Today, streaming platforms prioritize high-traffic entertainment via algorithms, overshadowing documentaries like Eva Green's on labor rights. Marx's insights prompt us to ask, is capital shaping our cultural choices? These contradictions remain stark today. In 2023, the global 1% owned nearly half the world's wealth, while the bottom 50% held just 2%. Tech giants optimize profits through algorithms, causing widespread low-wage job losses. For example, Bangalore call center worker Anita Rao lost stable income due to outsourcing layoffs. Marx's insights urge us to question, is capitalism's prosperity built on inequality? Marx further noted that capitalism's contradictions extend to ecological destruction. Though he didn't directly address the environment, he highlighted capital's plundering of natural resources. In 19th century Britain, coal overmining caused land subsidence and harmed workers' health. Today, global warming and resource depletion, like Amazon rainforest deforestation, confirm capital's environmental toll. Marx's theory warns that capitalism's expansion fuels not just economic but ecological crises. Commodities and money, the medium of capital's operation. In Das Kapital, Marx deeply analyzed the roles of commodities and money, revealing the mediums of capital's operation. He argued that commodities, as products of labor, have use-value meeting needs and exchange-value market price. Money, as the universal medium of exchange, further obscures labor's essence. He wrote, "Money is the completed form of commodity relations." Take 18th century Britain's wool trade. Shepherd John Carter sold wool to textile mills, earning money to buy food. On the surface, the trade seemed fair, but Marx argued that money hides the unequal distribution of labor's value. Mill owners squeezed John's labor value by driving down wool prices. Marx noted that money is not just an exchange tool but a bridge to capital accumulation. Money's bridging role also appears in international trade. Marx analyzed how 19th century Britain dominated global markets through money. London's East India Company used money to buy Indian opium, trading it for Chinese tea and silk, amassing vast wealth. But this deepened colonial workers' poverty, like Indian farmer Rajendra Singh, forced to grow opium, leaving his land barren and life unsustainable. Marx wrote, "Money links the world's labor but deepens exploitation." This globalized money flow laid the foundation for the capitalist world system. Money also birthed the credit economy, which Marx keenly analyzed. He noted that banks transform money into capital through loans, fueling accumulation. In the 1860s, London banker James Rothschild lent to railway companies, earning high interest, but when the railway bubble burst, workers and small investors like Margaret Davies suffered heavy losses. Marx's analysis warns that while the credit economy speeds capital flow, it plants seeds of financial crises. In the 2020s, soaring global debt, like Latin American farmer Juan Lopez's bankruptcy from high-interest loans, echoes Marx's foresight. Today, money takes more complex forms. In the 2020s, cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin emerged as new mediums, yet their price swings still reflect labor value. Programmer Rafael Gomez coded for blockchain projects, creating value, but speculators reaped profits through currency trading, leaving laborers with little. Marx's theory reveals that behind money lies the struggle between labor and capital. Marx also explored money's fetishism. People chase money, seeing it as wealth itself, ignoring the labor behind it. In 19th century London Stock Exchange, investors chased rising share prices, overlooking workers like James Harper. Today, algorithmic stock trading amplifies this fetishism, with investors like New York's Sophia Chen obsessed with price swings, heedless of workplace conditions. 7. Historical lessons and modern echoes. Das Kapital is not just an economic treatise but a mirror reflecting history and today's realities. When Marx wrote, the Industrial Revolution reshaped Europe, with factories replacing crafts and urban slums overtaking rural fields. By observing factories and workers' lives in Britain and France, he uncovered capitalism's operating laws. These laws still apply today. Take late Qing Dynasty China, where the self-strengthening movement introduced machine production to catch up with the West, yet landlord and bureaucratic exploitation kept workers destitute, failing to transform society. Marx's theory explains why technological progress didn't bring widespread prosperity. In 1860s Shanghai, yarn factory worker Wang Fuxing labored 16 hours daily for wages barely enough to survive, while foreign merchants and officials amassed fortunes. Wang's plight was not unique. The Qing's self-strengthening movement adopted Western technology but didn't alter social inequalities. Marx's theory shows that capitalism's production, wherever it takes root, centers on surplus value extraction. In Fuzhou, shipyard worker Lin Jiwan built warships toiling 15 hours daily, but layered deductions left him barely enough to eat. Marx noted that this exploitation stems from private ownership of production, not technology itself. He wrote, "Capital's global spread carries exploitation to every corner." This exploitation also manifests in gender inequality. Marx observed that capitalism often uses women's lower wages to extract more surplus value. In 1860s London, seamstress Clara Burton sewed dozens of shirts daily, earning half a male worker's wage. Marx cited factory reports, women's labor is a cheap source for capital. Today, in global clothing supply chains, Bangladeshi worker Fatima Akhtar toils in sweatshops for less than $50 a month. This prompts reflection: does capitalism's gender exploitation persist? In today's globalized economy, multinationals shift factories to low-wage countries, extracting surplus value and sparking labor protests and environmental issues. Das Kapital's relevance lies in its call to focus on fair wealth distribution. In the 2020s, artificial intelligence boosts efficiency but fuels job instability. Detroit auto worker Carlos Sanchez lost his job to automation, turning to unstable gig work. Marx's question remains sharp: who does technological progress serve? Can we build a fairer society? Marx also analyzed globalization's role in advancing capitalism. In the 19th century, Britain plundered colonial resources, like India's cotton, to fuel Manchester's textile industry. Today, global supply chains enable firms like a certain phone manufacturer to produce parts in Asia, sell in the US, and funnel profits to a few executives. Marx's insight reminds us that globalization extends capital accumulation. 8. The future of capital and our choices. Das Kapital is a timeless classic, not only revealing capitalism's mechanisms but offering a key to understanding modern society. Marx's labor theory of value highlights workers' contributions, the surplus value theory exposes profit origins, and his analysis of accumulation and contradictions predicts capitalism's crises. These insights aren't outdated theories but tools for observing the world. Today, capital's power continues to shape our lives. From Silicon Valley tech giants to global supply chains, every transaction reflects the struggle between labor and capital. We can ask ourselves, how can technology serve people, not just profits? How can we pursue wealth while safeguarding fairness and dignity? In 2023, a clothing brand's child labor scandal in its supply chain led consumer Emma Davies in London to launch a boycott, pushing for better labor rights. Emma's action shows consumer power, but Marx reminds us that individual resistance needs collective action to truly shift capital's logic. In the late 19th century, British labor leader William Morris organized textile worker strikes, forcing factory owners to improve wages and hours. Marx wrote, "Workers' unity is the true threat to capital." Today, global labor movements remain active. In 2022, logistics worker Carlos Mendes in Spain led a strike, winning minimum wage guarantees. Marx's theory also inspires alternative economic models. In the early 20th century, Spain's Mondragon cooperative, inspired by Das Kapital, built worker-run factories where profits are shared, remaining a success today. Marx's insights prompt us to ask, can we transcend capitalism to build a worker-centered economy? From community agriculture to open-source software movements, like programmer Lydia Wolf contributing code for free to open-source projects, these efforts answer Marx's call for a fairer future. This shows Marx's ideas continue to inspire action. Marx left us not just critique but hope for the future. He believed human ingenuity could overcome capital's limits and create a better society. From 19th century labor movements to today's environmental and fair trade initiatives, Marx's ideas guide our reflection and action. Let us use Das Kapital as a mirror to reflect on the past, examine the present, and boldly step toward the future.